So I've read a little about a newly introduced bill called the Data Protection Bill. So can you tell me something about the bill?
Yeah, Aradhya. So on 11th of December 2009, this new data protection bill was introduced in the parliament.
Okay.
However, this has been referred to the Joint Select Committee of the Parliament and they will submit their report in February 2020.
Okay. So in this title you had the Data Protection Bill. So what exactly is data in this bill?
Yeah, so Aradhya, this bill actually defines majorly three categories of data. One is the personal data, which means any data which identifies a person. Second category is sensitive personal data, which is too sensitive, for example, your biometric, your sexual orientation. Third, it defines a critical data, which government will notify as and when the bill comes into force. And the sensitive personal data has been categorized again into two categories. One is your financial data and two is biometric related data.
Okay. So then again, how does the ecosystem of data collection work?
Yeah, so that's very interesting into this. So what this bill defines is that it coins a word which is called principals, fiduciaries and managers. So let's understand that. The bill defines that there will be a data principal, which means an individual who will provide the data. Then the other one is a data fiduciary, which means the entity who is obligated to collect that data for processing.
Okay.
And a new term which is called consent managers have also been introduced into this. These will be entities who would get registration from the Data Protection Authority, and on behalf of data fiduciaries, they will collect the data from data principals.
Okay. So, what are the norms for compliance and enforcement?
Yes, so in a very layman's language, this provides an obligation on data fiduciaries to appoint a data protection officer, which means all significant data fiduciary entities will appoint a data protection officer who would be responsible to compliance and report to the government for all the compliances as well as breaches, reporting and etc. And the bill also brings a flavor in which a data protection authority will be appointed under the law, which will be kind of a regulator. They will also notify the necessary rules and regulations which will be complied with by the data fiduciaries.
Okay. So these breaches that you're talking about, there must be some penalties for the violations and breaches. What are these?
Yes. So I think this is one of the stringent bill. I have seen it. And this bill categorizes the breaches into majorly two parts. One is that if there is a major breach, then the penalties will be about 150 million rupees
150
or
million.
3% of the global turnover of that entity, whichever is higher.
Okay.
And the other part of the breach will be where the penalties will be 50 million Indian rupees or 2% of the global turnover, whichever is higher.
Oh, that's
a lot of penalties, and I think this will pave the way for massive compliance by the data fiduciaries.
So that is a lot of penalties for data privacy and breaches.
Yeah, but that is at the same time that gives kind of a duty to tackle the personal data.
Yeah, which is very important.
Yes.
Which also is a very nice segue to my next question, which is I've been reading and it is a hotly debated topic amongst the international communities about cross-border data transfers. So does this bill also talk about something upon that?
Yes. I think I was just thinking, why did not you ask being economics student? So very interestingly, this bill deviates from the earlier data protection bill which was proposed by Justice Sri Krishna Committee, where the cross-border data transfer was completely no because the more focus was towards localization. However, this does not put any restriction in transfer of cross-border personal data.
Oh.
Right. However, the sensitive personal data and critical data cannot be transferred cross-border.
Okay.
However, one provision has been kept here for which we call as an exceptions. So in exceptional circumstances, sensitive personal data can be transferred cross-border subject to explicit consent by the data principal and also the approval from the data protection authority. So, so there are much obligations have been given here.
Okay. So along these lines, are there any other special features that you've noticed in this bill?
Yeah, interestingly, I have first time seen that a word called harm has been defined in this bill, which means that if any harm is resulted to the data principal when he is submitting his data, then the harm will have implications to the processor. The processor here is a data fiduciary.
Yeah.
So which means that the provisions have been made, there will be a compensation or data principal can seek for from the adjudication officer.
Yeah.
And this harm will be defined and evaluated basis the complaint. So for example, if data principal says that I have given my data for a specific purpose at the time when I gave the consent.
Yeah.
And if the purpose is attained, which means my data is, because right to forgotten is also covered under this bill, which means the fiduciary cannot process the data now. But if he comes to know that his data has been processed for another purpose, which means a harm has been committed.
Okay.
So he has the power under this bill to go to the adjudicating officer and claim compensation.
Okay.
So that compensation, one provision I have seen, which is very good. The other one is that if anonymized data is processed and if someone re-identified that data, this has given a criminal offense flavor in this bill, which means an imprisonment of 3 years have been defined or a 20,000 rupees fine has been defined for re-identification of the data. And I think third one I have seen is that age of the children in this bill has been defined as that the children age up to 18 years and their personal data will have some new rules and regulations which will bring an additional obligations on the data fiduciaries and consent managers, which we will come to know once the bill comes into force.
Okay. So these are the three things, I suppose. It's the inclusion of harm, it is the inclusion of de-anonymization of data, and
children-related processing of the personal
data.
So these are the, I think, very snippets of this. So let's see what the select committee now recommends finally in February 2020.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.